How to transfer ancient holistic Ayurvedic treatments into a Western medical practice location. We're looking into grief and sadness and mourning, and that they are not welcome in the modern life of Western societies. Loss seems to be equal lose. There, it seems to be no time to stop the daily business and to realize emptiness. Encountering unpleasant emotions and being able to integrate them into the personal narrative is important for healing. Ayurveda allows the patient to go even beyond this. By non-verbal experiences of wellness and soothing, of comfort and care, they allow themselves to dive deeper into their original, unharmed self. Understanding the importance of rituals and routine like Ahara Vihara, lifestyle and nutrition as the key tools of Ayurveda to restore a person's balance is essential to achieve the best results in treatment. Copying Indian rituals and manners is not a solution, however, as the patient needs to find authenticity in practice and treatment. In fact, it is important to understand one's own culturally and family roots and upbringing to establish a strong self-identity. Each society develops its own codes of understanding, support and integrity, rituals and routines. However, Ayurveda itself emphasizes on living according to one's own authentic needs and respecting those of others. Historical and anthropological research suggests that this Western perspective on meaning cannot be applied directly to non-Western cultures. For example, psychological researchers have been trying to translate English questionnaires about meaning and life into other languages, but they often get stuck in translation, as different languages and cultures conceptualize meaning differently. For example, individuals in Western countries often approach meaning as one specific static thing that they only need to discover once in their lifetime. However, non-Western cultures and other eras show more dynamic, social, intuitive, behavioral, and less monolithical concepts of meaning from Voss, Meaning of Life, 2018. By copying parts out of social cultural context from a complex society, we would not be able to meet the patient's individual needs. In fact, we could even increase feelings of being alienated in his own cultural and social surrounding. Chanting names of Indian deities, changing the name into a foreign language, or simply using the prefix goddess, wearing exotic clothes or turbans might be serving the narcissistic self of many traumatized people, but it is not all to be understood as a role model for treatment. As C.G. Jung expresses clearly in his famous commentary on the secret of the golden flowers in ancient Taoist text. I say it in German now. Es ist dem westlichen Menschen aufgegeben, das Östliche anzuempfinden. In the translation into English, it is the Westerner's ability to close by feel the Eastern mind. This is a vague translation, unfortunately. Feeling close to something does not mean integrating it into one's own beliefs and meaning. Meaning making in the West in the 21st century is not necessarily the same as in ancient India. However, emotions and primary needs definitely are the same. Under the right circumstances, with the right intention, it is possible to transfer emotional knowledge and meaning into the life of a patient without alienating the patient from their own culture. Ayurveda and yoga introduce the patient carefully through their own and individual experiences to the underlying common sense of meaning making. They encourage meaning making by experiencing a safe place and contentment. Ayurveda and yoga science are describing the right use of all the necessary tools to define and treat the shattered mind as well as the suffering body. The triune brain inquiry into recent neuroscience to answer questions how Ayurveda works. Question 1. Am I safe? Neuroscience is able to differentiate behavioral patterns from the reptilian part of the brainstem, which is the fastest and instinctive response to distress, hunger, and mating, and mostly deals with the question, am I safe? Ayurveda answers, as manas is defined as a part of consciousness on the lower sensory mind, it has no ability to evaluate the information it takes in. It continues to collect more and more. It has no ability to make decisions or evaluate. It accumulates information and responds to it by habit or through the intervention of the instincts. But neither habits nor instincts involve evaluation, so judgment and discrimination are beyond the capacity of manas. Manas carries out orders, coordinating a response with the sensory impression it has received. Question 2. Am I loved? The limbic parts of the brain are working on emotions and feelings and have been developing later. The question could be, am I loved? This involves already social behavior as well as self-identity. The storehouse of impressions, chitta, is the foundation or mental stream in which the rest of the mind operates. It is the unconscious of modern psychology, lying outside awareness. In part, it acts as a passive reservoir, receiving and storing impressions from all the impacts the world offers. As one part, a more passive one, is partially acting with manas and simply collecting data. The other part is more of a filter and can be used actively. While we cannot filter out our general sensory input, we can learn how to modify our reaction and even quieten it. It is when the senses are quiet and the sensory motor mind is receiving no information from the outside world that memories and impressions from the past begin to bubble up. Nothing current or life is being broadcast, then replays an old movie that is seen. Chitta is plugged in, and memory traces and impressions from the past begin to flash onto the screen from yoga and psychotherapy. According to this, Ayurveda and yoga can unfold now the ability to restructure memories and modify the response to past experiences that are on the screen of them presence. The analogy between experimental conditions of sensory deprivation and the structure of a psychoanalytic treatment situation was observed by many. The reduction of sensory input appears to facilitate access to unconscious material. The emerge of primary process material or regression in the experimental situation can be utilized constructively by the subject for either problem solving or the achievement of creative synthesis of experience from Solomon. Question 3. Who am I? Information which stems from the evolutionary later developed frontal lobe parts of the brain are connected to problem solving, memory, behavior, personality. The question here could be, who am I? What did I learn from it? This reflects the most abstract form of thinking and self-inquiry. Now citing from Yoga and Psychotherapy, Ancient and Modern Concepts. But The sense of I lends the ability to separate the self from the flow of events and to think of oneself as an individual entity. This I-ness is called ahankara in Shankar philosophy, and in Sanskrit aham means I am. Ahankara does not instinctively flow with nature. It makes possible the question, what's in it for me, and lends to the ability to say, these are mine. By creating such barriers as mine and thine, it separates the self from others. Thoughts are no longer merely images flashed on the screen. They are my thoughts. End of the quote. The end of the list of comparison between the triune brain and the yoga and Ayurveda philosophy matches is buddhi. There is also a spectrum of stages of buddhi that parallels the evolution of I-ness. Buddhi, or reason, evolves in a series of steps as personal growth takes place. Again, from the mind modern concepts. Buddhi may assert its authority over the realm of impulse, instinct and habit and choose some different course of action. Acknowledging the existence of these lower motivations, manas and chitta by me, it may take a decision which is relatively independent of impulses or past programming. Buddhi has the ability to decide and leave the old route by choice. Its development and training through awareness, sensual positive experiences and breath control can offer a change of response for the traumatized patient. Buddhi is the faculty to discriminate and eradicate what is not necessary. Buddhi provides meaning making by concentrating on fruitful and creative solutions. Buddhi has some capacity to remain detached from the influence of memory traces and sense impressions. It has at least potentially the ability to choose from the earlier source. Developing the ability to make active choices, even just as a potential, is the direction all trauma therapy has to focus on. It induces hope and defines a way of how treatment guidelines can be laid out. Using Ayurveda and yoga techniques and bringing them into sincere practice can make change happen. It is said that nothing changes if nothing changes. As change is only described as potential, the willingness and the ability, in addition, with a diligent regime, are necessary to turn the potential into a real life changer that lasts. Buddhi, by definition, has a decision-making function. It can decide to permit influence by some memories and not others. Change of perception of unpleasant touch to pleasant touch, ideas of a safe space, etc. Is Buddhi maintaining detachment, observation towards memory traces? It can allow those to simply pass away and dissipate. From the mind, Buddhi can decide to step out of the chain of cause and effect karma. It can decide not to remain caught up in that cycle of action and reaction determined by previous programming. By using its full potential, it acquires the property of will. It is remarkable that these recent discoveries of the brain parts and the particular functions in the sense of self-identity, decision-making, and even meaning-making have been made with extensive studies worldwide, brain scans and computer tomography, while the descriptions from Charaka are merely empiric studies through observation, self-inquiry, and fundamental awareness. Humans are obviously able to monitor and observe their own behavior, decision-making, even their brain as in observing how tasks get done, problems are solved, etc. in neurological function. They are able to modify their response to alterations in their life by learning. Traumatized patients therefore can be enabled to control or modify their distress response through continuous learning and relearning by practice. Repetition and consistency are the tools for rewiring the distress response. Yoga and Ayurveda deliver a rich history of detailed and various techniques. These techniques vary from relaxation to invigorating, from hyperventilation to breath hold, from warmth and pampering to freeze and pain. And each of them are part of a detailed concept to select and administer the correct treatment. The triune brain has very clearly overlapping discoveries with the concepts of the creation of consciousness according to Shankya philosophy, and on a medical level with Charaka's empirical discoveries on stress, trauma, and the Bhuta Vidya.